Hopefully, folks can see my slides. If you can't, just scream, and we'll take it from there. So this is the product cohort session 2. Session 1 was last month. Session 3 will be next month. So they keep building on each other, and they're all related. But if you weren't here for the last one, no worries. I know there was the recordings, and I put the slides out in circle, so you guys have all the information to catch up afterwards. So let's see. Just a reminder, if you haven't met me, this is me. So if you want to connect on LinkedIn, you've got my LinkedIn details. If you wonder why sometimes I lean to the left, it's because I have a small furry creature that occasionally needs to be scratched or have his tummy tickled and does not understand the context of meetings. He just thinks he's the most important thing in the world. So my background is a combination of user experience and technology and business. And one thing about product people, I'm a product person, is we don't come from one path. Product people come into product from an all different range of things. My entry into product was through user experience. My background is in user experience research. And so a lot of what I talk about today will be relevant for folks that are very interested in the human side of product management and what that means to be able to explore and uncover what I should say, quote, humans are thinking. I know we're dealing with bots as an AI, and all of that as being, quote, a representation of humans. So we'll weave them into our conversation as well. Cool. So this is the model that we're using for the product sessions. Discover was last month. And again, that information's all out in circle if you want to find it. We're going to focus on define today. And then the third session is going to bring, develop, and deliver together. And you've got then an amazing person who's following up in July who's going to be talking about go to market. And so taking a lot of the facets that we cover, packaging them up and being able to, take what you've done and bring it to the world. So on that note, just a quick refresher that product, oh, yes, please, if, share all the information you can in Slack. I wasn't sure, or sorry, not in Slack, in chat. I wasn't sure how many people are going to be here. So sometimes I have a slide just saying introduce yourselves. So if you can in chat, just, say who you are, where you're based, and yeah, a fun fact about yourself. That would be a
And
great
share
way.
the company as that point,
Oh,
right?
great.
We want these sessions to be as interactive as possible. So for, whether it's anything that you're currently building that you're open to sharing, right? We want to go over a lot of these topics directly to that, right? Open space to share feedback, not just from, Diana, but of course everyone here as well. So yeah, whatever you want to share, you can use the chat there and we'll do it live.
That's awesome. Thank you. So yeah, if we want to take a pause and folks just, yeah, as Brian said, please share a bit about yourselves. I'd love to know who you are, where you're hailing from. And then as Brian highlighted, just the product or the company that you're representing. So if you want to take a minute to do that, and then we'll dive in.
Perfect. And then as people are doing that, excited, we've got some new faces here as well. And really the biggest thing too is as you all know with Go that we have a lot of, founders in the product space, founders in the service space, consulting, coaching, a lot of different, value props in what we're offering. And that's the biggest thing I think that a lot of what I've learned through product, and of course, Diana's seen throughout her career among a bunch of other things, is just there's how can we really focus on our ICP? There's different ICPs that might get different pieces of value. And so as we kind of point in on this session, the go to market one next, things we've learned from Lyle in the first innovation roundtable cohort, it all builds together. And so that's kind of the biggest thing we want to take away. So excited to, again, dive into a lot of these things and go from there. So
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So keep typing in, sharing who you are, a bit about where you're coming from, and then a bit about your company or your product. Awesome. All right. And again, any questions? I'll try to check the chat as much as possible. Also, just scream out if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll try to see it. And then, yeah, happy to pause and go in different angles as well. All right. So, quick refresher for last time. You missed it. So, product discovery is typically the first phase of this path that we're going down to build a product. And it's understanding your customers and helping you use that insight to identify the direction to take with your product. And so we talked a lot about, customers now will be, actual humans, it'll be bots, but whatever you want to understand about them, there are ways to do so. And we talked about, again, tools and such as, being able to speak to individuals, gather those insights. We talked about how to leverage AI across all of those facets as well. And the other piece about product discovery is where the team comes together. And I'm a strong advocate for product to be one of those stakeholder groups that brings together people right from the beginning. And so that means you're not doing things in isolation. You're not doing things, closed off in some room somewhere, virtual or in person. You're bringing everybody along with you. And so you're partnering with engineering, you're partnering with design, or maybe you're even doing design. But all of that means is you're working with others to help ensure that they have the insight that they need to be able to go on that journey with you. And so just think about how you work with your team. Are you being open? Are you sharing that knowledge from a sales call? Or are you keeping it to yourself? I'm a huge advocate of sharing information, being transparent about it, because it really helps raise the bar for everyone to be able to introduce a better product for all your customers, either existing or potential. Thank you, everybody. Nice meeting you all. All righty. So from there, we're going to go into the next bit. So we're going to talk about product definition. So in that diverge, converge diagram that we used in the beginning, it's called define, but we're going to talk about that today. So what is product definition? It's where you're narrowing down that focus. So in discovery, you're diverging, you're gathering a lot of information. In definition, you're converging. You're narrowing down on what you're going to focus on. And so you've taken all of that information from discovery, brought it together, synthesized it, talked about it, put it in, Claude or whatever tool you like to use, and you've got a problem statement that you're going to test out. And that doesn't mean it's going to be what you end up with, but you got to have a starting point. And so you want to put a problem statement out there, or could be an opportunity that you want to address or that your instincts tell you exists. It's a hypothesis. It's something you're going to test and iterate and refine and validate, but all of that's going to get you tighter in regards to what you can do and where you go next. So, why do we have them separated? Why do we talk about product discovery and then product definition? The reason is in discovery, you're looking through a whole bunch of information. Everything is a data point, and you want to be able to synthesize all that information. So you want to go really wide and gather a whole lot of information before narrowing. If you narrow first, you're going to miss all those possible satellites of knowledge or insight or opportunity because you've narrowed too early. So you want to think wide at the beginning and then narrow as you learn. And so again, discovery is about that wide, expansive research opportunity. Definition brings it together to be able to focus on what you really want to do, what problem you really want to solve. And so you'll hear a lot of variations of the problem you need to solve. You'll hear jobs to be done. What are people hiring your product to do? You want to have that insight to be able to start refining what you're actually going to be building. And again, doing that too early means you're missing out of opportunities. And I'd also say it's introducing a bit of bias into the listening that you're doing with potential customers because you already have in your head what you think they want to do. And that may not be what they're saying. But if you have your brain dialed into, I need to hear this phrase or I need to hear this thing, then you're going to tune everything out. And that could mean that you're missing opportunities, missing the real opportunity. So, define phase, what does it do? It's where you take all that information from discovery, you synthesize it down. You then think about the problem and put it into a way that you can really easily talk about it to people. You want a catchphrase. and something that you can reference, your team can reference. You want to be able to use that insight and that framing to prioritize what you're going to explore and what you're not. And you want to bring everybody along with you. Again, if you're leading a team or it's you and your partner, you want to make sure you're on the same page. And so this phase is really, really key to make sure that everybody's on the same page around the problem that you're going to solve. Because if people are going off at different directions, then you're missing the brilliance that each person can bring to be able to refine and hone. And again, discovery is where you're going broad, definition is where you're going narrow. So we're at that point now where you need everybody to come together and focus on that problem and that opportunity. Okay. And together, you define what success is. Depending on the stage of your company, there are going to be different definitions of what success is. At an early stage, it might be, yeah, we want a couple of design partners, a couple people that we're going to work with that are going to help us refine our offering and get it more ready for go to market. It could be that you're already in market, you've got a lot of traction. And so then you want to expand. So keep in mind your success metrics are often related to what you're going to be doing based on the stage of your company. But you want to have agreement around those because what you define as a metric is what people are going to aim for. Just that's how human nature works. If you're measuring something, people are going to aim for increasing, achieving, performing towards that thing. We've got a lot of buzz going around about companies, wanting to measure AI token usage. Guess what? Everybody's figuring out how to game the system so that token usage skyrockets, even though they're not building things that are really beneficial. So whatever metric you give to people, they're going to figure out how to get there. So make sure it's thoughtful around the success metrics that you're aiming for. So AI, again, everywhere. There's amazing insight in regards to how AI is informing product development. There's a woman named Marilee who teaches an AI course on product management on Maven. She has this slide. I love it. It's incredible. It just shows the iterations and where you are weaving in AI and how the product development lifecycle has changed. So what I've done is just pulled out those numbers from her diagram into the sessions that we're doing. And so 1 and 2, as you can see, ideation, opportunity, that's discovery. What we're talking about today is 3 and 4, that concept to prototype. Notice the iterative loops. With AI, you can do those iterations much faster and much easier. And so a lot of lot of rotation through. She uses that term minimum viable quality. You can use MVP, minimum lovable product, figure out your own acronym that you prefer, but same thing. And so a lot of loops in 3 and 4. That gets us into 5. 5 is really interesting because it pulls together information from definition and then allows you to rapidly test and do more analysis as you get ready to, deliver the product in 6. And then you keep going, you keep refining. So there's a really nice iterative pattern that she's introduced and a lot of loops. This may seem like a lot, but you can do this really, really quickly with AI. That doesn't mean you skip steps. It just means that it's much easier to gather information, apply it as context, refine, and keep on going. So, again, you want to have a lot of insight as you're going through the process. AI allows you to consume that insight, apply that insight, and refine iteratively as you go. All right. So, I'm going to give you an example of a product discovery session. And so, it's from my past. I worked at a company called Simple Practice. Simple Practice is for mental health and wellness professionals. They want to help their clients. They don't want to have to worry about, taxes or insurance or billing or documentation, all of those administrative things. And Simple Practice offers tools and the ability to do all of that back office things for them. So it puts it all together in an offering, in a SaaS offering that has all of these capabilities. A lot of them are automated so that the mental health and wellness professionals can focus on being mental health and wellness professionals as opposed to all of those other aspects that they often just didn't realize. So that's what we did at Simple Practice. And so we had the opportunity to refine our notes and documentation. And we call the group that worked on notes and documentation a squad. That means there are a couple of people aligned specifically focused on notes and documentation. And in our company, in Simple Practice, we found it really beneficial to have, a number of people continually aligned on an area or a facet of the product, because then they developed really deep knowledge into it, not just, from an insight perspective, not just from data, but from an instinct perspective. They had really, really great product taste, product sense around what was needed for notes and documentation just based on their deep knowledge and insight. So we were tasked with identifying the top three things to improve notes and documentation. And so, how do we do that? We needed to figure out ways that could improve the user experience. So, people wanted to use the product more, the capabilities more. So, those are some of the areas underneath the enhanced user experience that we focused on. We wanted to be able to have notes and documentation used in a lot of other places within the product so that when people wanted to capture a thought or some insight, they didn't have to navigate back to one place. Notes and docs were there. It was just there through an integration, and it allowed them to use the offering, wherever they were within the product. And the other thing we wanted to do was just to get a better understanding and connect more with customers. So nice, again, an iterative loop. By getting more insight from customers, then we could be able to use that knowledge to improve the product. And by improving the product, we could have it be more flexible and be in the places that the individuals wanted it to be. It's a really, really nice loop. So those were the three main areas we were going to focus on to be able to understand what were the top priority changes that we needed to make. So we didn't just do it. We did some research. And so you may be thinking, God, research is going to take time, it's going to slow us down. But to be blunt, it's a hell of a lot better than doing the wrong thing and having to undo it. And so if you can spend a little bit of time just gathering that insight up front and using that insight to determine the best direction for your customers, that's time well spent. So we started by synthesizing the insight. We had a lot of data from customers that had provided insight into customer success. We used this tool called User Voice. People entered in, sorry, not, yeah, User Voice, and people entered in information for us about, the product and where some of the bugs were and bits and pieces like that. We use that insight to be able to identify common themes, and those common themes helped us to be able to focus on what we wanted to address. And these little nuggets of information really helped us be able to take that wide expanse of insight and narrow down on where those really great nuggets were, that what it could improve the product for the users. So, what did we do? We looked at a number of different data sources. We looked at cancellation surveys. Were people mentioning notes and docs in the cancellation surveys? We looked at user voice. So user voice is where people, shared feedback. They voted up and down capabilities that they wanted. So we looked a lot of information in user voice. We spoke to customers. People may not say everything when they're typing a ticket or when they're, just filling in a cancellation survey. But when you talk to them, you're going to uncover really what is the true meaning of the information and also their true reason for not using or liking a capability. Humans are wired to be polite. And so we may not tell you what really is bothering us in a cancellation survey or in a quick chat to user voice. But when you talk to us, we're going to tell you a lot of insight. So we did customer interviews, and then we use net promoter responses. Net promoter scores are identifying if an individual is going to promote your product. We wanted to see if people were, happy with notes and docs and would actually promote the product as a result. So we used all this insight. So I've put AI next to the things that you can use AI to analyze. So you can take cancellation surveys, put them into CSV. You can upload them into Claude or OpenAI or Gemini, whatever tool of choice you like, and you can analyze those patterns. You can take the net promoter scores, same thing. You can load it in, be able to analyze it. You do those customer interviews and you can gather insight. Folks are probably wondering, why do I actually need to speak to actual people? Why don't I speak to synthetic users? And synthetic users are getting better. They're a good representation, but they're not human. And humans say one thing, mean something else. We may shrug our shoulders, but tell you everything's fine. And so by speaking to actual people, we got really good insight into what the actual problems were, as opposed to hypotheticals. We could drill further into a pain point that someone raised and be able to get a true understanding about what the stumbling blocks were. And you can see a lot of acronyms. I apologize for that. Every technology, every company has their own acronyms. So we had new specialties that we were talking to. We had speech language pathologists we were talking to. We had physical therapists we were talking to, and occupational therapists we were talking to. So apologize for the acronyms, but just meant we talked to a lot of different types of people to be able to get deeper insight so that we could determine where the pain points were and be able to refine the offering.
And then Diana, quick question too, because I'm sure people have
Yeah.
probably heard of synthetic users at one point or the other. And
Oh,
when it comes to customer discovery, I mean, synthetic users is, I know it's not super, super new, but it's generally newer with the rise
yeah.
of AI and everything. And so, one of the big things, no matter what stage, right, people are always doing product discovery. And so, can you just from your experience, for those of us that have considered, as you kind of continue to do customer discovery and research and surveys with your current user base, can you just take a couple minutes and really shine on the difference between the synthetic? Obviously, I agree. Right? Talking to real people, your real users or real potential customers will always be the best. But like, where do you see that's kind of changed over even just the past like 6 months? With because I have talked to founders who have done that and have
Yeah.
had mixed reviews. So just want to hear your open thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think exactly as Brian's highlighting, synthetic users are getting better. And synthetic users are typically an aggregation of real users. And that insight, that context is used to create a bot. And that bot has in its brain knowledge, reflections, data, documents, etc., that a real human would have. And those synthetic, those AI generated humans can then respond to questions and they can give you feedback on anything. They can give you feedback on a product, they can give you feedback on a newsletter. And you want to be able to slice and dice so that you can get the synthetic users that are relevant to your product. And so when we were going through this, synthetic users were still starting. They weren't really, a thing. But I'll use an example now. When I work on a newsletter or I work for a startup now, I will use synthetic users to refine my wording, to be able to understand a bit about what terminology resonates, what terminology is confusing. Is a hook in an email, for example, catchy enough to cause people to do something? You actually met someone last week using them. Yeah, cool. And they're really, really helpful just to get a good, I would say, get a good sense of the direction. But then I believe you still want humans to validate it and to refine it. And so I think the synthetic users offer the ability to do some rapid iterations. But when you're thinking about the final offering or close to final offering, you need humans because again, we're going to change based on the weather. We're going to change based on the news. We're going to change based on how a competitor did something. There are all these different facets that inform how we feel and how we show up that a synthetic user doesn't have. And so you want all of those nuances to be able to inform what you're doing because humans are fickle, whereas the synthetic users aren't. They are programmed to be one way and they are that one way. So that's how I'd use them. But yeah, thank you, NA for putting that in. Yeah, synthetic users is a great one. There are a lot of companies that have done it. They often start with consumer and then go enterprise, and as soon as they go enterprise, they're priced out of what I think most people can afford. So, try to use the companies early on in their life cycle, because chances are they're all gonna go enterprise and then they bump up the price. I found that a number of times. But yeah, I use them, as I said, for newsletters, just getting a validation on, would somebody read it and then refining based on there. So really a good way to gather feedback, but don't use them instead of humans, use them as well as humans.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Diana. And obviously, everyone, I think I've spoken with most of you, but know that you have a very large community within Gilder of people that are always happy to help test and provide feedback on that front too, as humans. So lots of different ways to kind of assess that. So appreciate you sharing the context, Diana.
Yeah, no worries. And yeah, keep the question coming. And thank you, Brian, for for reminding me to pause too. I appreciate it. Um, So what we did, we went to user voice, downloaded the current information. As I said, you can use AI to download that information. User voice is always, refining as well. So they have AI capabilities that help you summarize things too. But I like pulling together a lot of different data sources, uploading those. I use, Claude more often than not, and being able to then synthesize all of the variety of sources into Claude. That helps to identify themes across all the different data sources. It helps to give you some quotes that you can use to be able to reference with others, and just really helps you identify those true pain points. And sometimes it'll align with your instincts, sometimes it doesn't. But when you have that much data as we did at that point, it's really, really valuable. When you're early on and you don't have that much data, it's still a good sounding board, 3, 4, 5 data points that you have, just to be able to refine your instincts. So from there, consolidating it all together, we had a tool called Dovetail. Dovetail still exists. It's, a great AI tool. And so you paste the information into Dovetail and then you can organize it. And so we had all of these data sources, we had all of these themes. We wanted to almost get them in a Kanban board to be able to sort and prioritize and identify themes, because that could help us then identify those top 3 areas that we wanted to focus on. And so in Dovetail, what you do is you add in topics underneath certain themes. And so for us, it was really important to have themes related to the user. So new specialties was one bucket of user for us. We wanted to look at the NPS, the people that had information that was going to sway them to either stay or go. And the other facet we wanted to look at is groups, because groups had different needs than individuals. Group practices, typically have one person who's an admin who may be managing the notes and docs. And so they had a different type of way that they use notes and docs than a single individual user. And so again, for your business, think about those work streams that are going to have different needs. And then you can tag the opportunities to those specific needs and identify, maybe there's some commonalities across those different groups. Maybe there isn't, but you want to be able to prioritize what to do based on the opportunities. For us, groups was a huge way that we were going to grow. Groups had more money. They typically were stickier. They didn't want to have to change. And so for us, even though we're looking at all these different areas, the groups were the one that we were going to weight towards because they were going to bring in more revenue overall. But we wanted to see if there were things that would benefit groups that also would benefit the other audiences too. So from there, we, did a lot of moving stuff around. This is card sorting. And card sorting helps you to group common themes. AI can do this for you, but it doesn't always understand the terms. And so this is one where I would definitely do human in the loop. You can have the AI do the initial card sorting of being able to understand and group things, but then make your own refinements. Move things around based on what you've observed, what you've learned, and that will, be the extra element that makes the information more valid and more usable. And so again, you can start with AI. This is something again that Dovetail does. and then use the human knowledge that you have to make those refinements that actually will be, for the win. So these were the top categories that we got back. People wanted to share documents. They wanted to be able to share them faster with clients. They wanted to be able to share them faster with their colleagues. And sometimes it was just a basic resend of something. They wanted that to be easier to do. Health and wellness, health in general, has a lot of compliance. The practitioners didn't want to have to keep up to date with all the compliance and can't blame them. Changes a lot, quite sticky. And so they wanted to ensure that what we offered met all the compliance needs so that they didn't have to worry about it. They could focus on their clients, on their patients, and we would take care of all of that compliance information in the background without them having to worry about it. We also had this feature called a template builder, which helped them to be able to create notes and docs formats in a way that got the client a good starting point, and then they could use the template builder to customize it to their specific needs. It was interesting, I'll put it politely, but it was hard to use. And people liked the opportunity to customize, but they didn't like how they had to do it. They also wanted things faster. Oftentimes, you need to complete paperwork by a certain deadline, and they wanted to be able to have things done in a more rapid manner. So these were the top feedback categories that we got. Again, a lot of synthesis, from AI, but that human to really, make sure that it was right, that things weren't miscategorized, and to be able to use that instinct as well as that insight to be able to weight priorities. And so, with that information, we wanted to make sure everyone in the team was aligned in that common direction. And so, again, that goes back to being open and honest about the way that information is shared. And so, we did workshops to be able to bring everybody in and do buy in. I think I mentioned it in the prior session, but there's this notion of the IKEA effect. If people are involved in building something or creating something, they're much more committed. And so these workshops were where we got everybody to feel that they were part of what was being created, of what was being built. And that made them more committed, not just at the start, but for the rest of the project. Clear communication. We don't remember everything. People tell us. And so if you say something once and don't say it again, chances are it's gone. And so we did, constant communication, constant updates, letting people know where we're at, letting people know what questions arrived. And because we kept that, that collaboration going, people knew where we're at, had a question, rapid responses, and everybody worked together to be able to move forward. And so again, all of those pieces that may seem like extra effort enabled us to create this shared understanding and enabled us to go much faster as a result, enabled us to have a lot of amazing insight from a whole range of people that opened up the opportunities in a way that got into the nooks and crannies and helped us to identify those true pain points that we could fix quickly for the customer. So, how do you do that? How do you frame a problem? So, you want to do it from the user perspective because they're the ones that you're trying to satisfy. So, you want to make sure that the way that you frame it up is in the client's views, in the client's words, and addressing, capturing, reflecting that need that they have. So you take the user perspective and you put it into a problem statement. That problem statement is clear. There's a notion of how might we, and that's a really good way to frame up a problem statement. And that allows people to then, brainstorm ways you could address it. Again, that alignment ensures everybody's focused on the problem statement, on that one problem statement, keeps everybody moving in the same direction. And when you have that alignment, then people can help you test that problem statement, validate, negate your assumptions, and make refinements together. And again, you can do that quite rapidly because you've brought everybody along in the journey. They have all the context. They know how they can work together and how they can benefit the customer. How do you create a problem statement? You think about what is the problem? That's pretty key. You want to talk about who's affected by the problem. Why does it matter? What's the issue? And then what evidence supports it. So all of that comes together to help you perform the problem statement. So here's our problem statement. Mental health and wellness practitioners are overwhelmed by administrative tasks, such as scheduling, billing, and client management, which reduces the time they can dedicate to providing care and growing their practice. So you can see all the ways that it addresses those areas that I identified on the prior slide. It's user-centric, it's specific, it avoids solutions because we don't have a solution yet, and it's actionable. It enables us to move forward. This is an example of a problem statement. So you want to be able to use that information to prioritize what you're going to do. And I know with AI, I know with really amazing people, you can do anything. That's not the answer. You want to be able to focus because if you do everything, you're not going to do anything well. And so we want to be able to identify what's going to have the most value, the most impact for our customers. So we use that problem statement to be able to prioritize and define those success metrics. Okay. So again, everybody's aligned. We knew what we wanted to focus on. We could then use that insight to be able to prioritize what capabilities, features, et cetera, we're going to enhance or change and what success is going to look like. So how do we do that? A couple different ways you can do it. There are others too, but these are some that we've used in the past. Impact versus effort is just a 4x4 matrix. Really quick and easy way to determine what's going to have the most impact for the least amount of effort. Opportunity scoring is a similar type of approach. You score each opportunity, each idea based on criteria that reflects your business. For us, it was customer value, strategic alignment with the organization's mission, and feasibility. Can we actually do it? OKRs, some companies will have OKRs, and that's like their guiding light, what they're all working towards. You can prioritize based on whether or not something meets or satisfies your OKRs. And then value versus complexity. So, are you going to be able to do something in a way that is easy for an individual to understand? And could it be done in a way that's going to be simple and straightforward instead of complicated? And so I would highlight that in regards to AI right now. There's a lot of things that if you wait, it's going to be much easier to do. And that's a hard thing to consider, but it's really valuable. Instead of, building certain capabilities or features, wait 2 weeks. And chances are they're going to be there in, Anthropic or an OpenAI. And so that complexity piece, especially right now, if something seems really complicated to do, wait. And I know that may sound wacky to people, but chances are it's going to get easier in a couple weeks. So that's something to weigh as a consideration. So our success metrics, how do we define them? We wanted to increase onboarding completion rates because if someone couldn't get into the product, couldn't figure out how to use notes and docs right in the beginning, the rest was irrelevant. So we needed to get them onto notes and docs in an easier way. If they were in it, so they got through that first checkpoint, we didn't want them to immediately feel frustrated and submit a ticket. We wanted them to be able to, use the product without having to need extra assistance or to share something that really just annoyed them. All of that, if they can get onto the product faster, if they don't have complaints really early, then they're going to be happier. That's a good thing. And then that's going to improve their usage of the feature. So all of those metrics came together to help us define success. One thing I would say, you've got the notion of a leading or a lagging indicator. A leading indicator is something that indicates right up front that there is a pattern of behavior that you need to address. A lagging indicator is something that happens as a result of a leading indicator. So if you're tracking lagging indicators, you've missed the cause. And so these were the areas that we unraveled to be able to go as early as possible in the process. So we were getting those leading indicators. And if we could address those leading indicators, such as onboarding, then those lagging indicators would improve as a result. Cool. All right. So here's some more AI tools. If you're into AI, I guess we all are at this point in time. These are some tools to consider. I like Hey Marvin just because of the logo. I think I shared it last time too. Other tools, Condens, as well as Userberry. So these are ones to check out. There'll be new ones that are popping up, every single day. So keep that in mind. But these are three that we considered at Simple Practice, and they're still around. So it's a good sign for them. Another one to look at is Listen Labs. Oh, cool. Good, Amelia. Um, Listen Labs is a great one, especially for interviews. You've got voice intonations, you've got, things from a conversation. And so oftentimes, especially still, they're tools that are specific to voice. And, that's a really great way to open up, a conversation and use that insight to be able to help refine what you're offering. So again, it can help with those transcripts that you have. And I'm going to do a plug for Cowork. As a product person, I love Cowork. I love Cloud Code, Chat, Cowork. Cowork is really cool because it comes with a whole set of product management skills. And one of those product management skills is related to research. And so if you upload research into Cowork and say, run run the skill for product discovery, it'll analyze and identify themes for you. And that's really cool. It does it really nicely. It does it in a really great format, client ready, all of those bits and pieces. So again, some things that, may seem really, niggly or annoying, their chances are their skills, their tools to be able to help make it simpler for you. And so instead of going through reams and reams of data yourself, you can have Cowork do it. I don't just turn around and send that, to my boss or to my client, whoever it may be. I do a pass because oftentimes there are things that just are weird, don't make sense, and just have been prioritized in the wrong place. So I don't trust it just to do 100%. It's really close, but I still want to make sure the wording, the positioning, the comments are, reflecting, the true ask, not something that the skill inferred. So all of that is really, really helpful. And that gets you to a point where you're addressing, these needs. One thing you may be wondering about is how do I know whose needs to serve? And so that's why I brought in the ideal customer profile here because you may have recognized there were a number of different customers that we were considering. We were thinking about groups, we were thinking about new specialties, and we'd gathered all this information and saw where the commonalities were. But as part of the prioritization, we needed to really hone in so that we could introduce features in a way that had the biggest bang for the buck. And so even though we had this information, we'd done this due diligence, one of the lenses that we needed to apply was our ideal customer profile. And that would help us, again, prioritize and hone in on where we are going to focus, specifically from a launch pattern. And so, how do you identify your ideal customer profile? It could be, someone who's trying to gain traction and finding that product market fit quickly. That can really, really help you with, ideal customer profile. Because if you're struggling to get users, maybe that you haven't found that ideal customer yet. I like this quote. We did not think about an ICP. We wish we did earlier. It's one of my biggest mistakes. And I think that's true a lot of times. We think everyone is our customer. And I'll be blunt, that's a cop out. Not everyone is a customer of everything. We all have unique preferences and, feelings and thoughts, and that makes us more likely to like something versus not. And so you really want to understand what makes that customer sticky to you, what's going to make them come back, and who are those people who are more likely to do so.
And I actually saw a really good quote on that. I know we've kind of got about 5, 10 minutes left, so we'll
Yeah.
kind of bring everything to full center. But I was talking to someone this week, and they basically said, a lot of times we look at our products and our companies and say, why wouldn't someone want to use this, right? It does everything that I know I had a problem with when I was incorporated or as a founder or XYZ. And in reality, there are right seven. Actually, sorry, this is Eric Reese also mentioning it at our session last week. But there are 8 billion, 7, 8 billion people on this planet that, again, of course, right, might not even think about using a product or might be the right fit, but again, are using an enterprise product or something else instead. And at the end of the day, it doesn't need to be, depending on what you're building, hundreds to thousands or however many of customers. But it starts with, again, who is those as you niche down and pick those really 2 to 3, maybe top segments or beachheads as you build into. How do you really make those people your super users? And a lot of what Diana shared here in these tools, and hopefully we'll continue the conversation as well here, and then also in the channel, is how do you really convert those people and find out, hey, or disassociate maybe my initial ICP is not the right one. And so glad you brought this up, Diane. I appreciate you sharing it. And actually looks like Amelia, I think you have a question as well.
I do, thank you. So Jennifer, thank you so much for this. Or I'm sorry, Diana. I was just writing Jennifer on my notes. Uh, Diana, thank you so much for this. As a product person, having come out of corporate product, all of this resonates a lot with me, and I think you've highlighted some fantastic tools here. I'm also coming from the perspective of an early stage founder. We have an incredibly small team. And one of the things that I work a lot on is trying to bridge my corporate experience with my founding experience. So as you think about this work that you've presented here, if there were one thing for a very, very small team to do as they're managing all the other things of the founding journey, what would be your number one suggestion for us to take away and implement today?
Talk to customers, talk to people. That to me is the thing that stands out above and beyond. I mean, I've worked at big companies, I've worked at small companies, I've worked at digital agencies. When we talk to customers, actually talk to them. And I'm going to say, not just talked at them, talked with them, listened to them. That's when we actually went the fastest and were most successful. Talk to people. I realize that may sound like an anti pattern right now because we've got AI doing so many things for us. Again, we talked about synthetic users, but talk to people. They're going to tell you pain points. If you have a prototype, share it with them. Just let them rip it to shreds. Talk to people.
Yeah, I just want to add, I love that answer. I would say my number one thing that I learned as a product executive is as product people, we need to be brave enough to poke the holes and fire test
Yeah.
our products before it gets in front of customers. And and I want to also add in the education space, which is where my product is, and in particularly in the grades K through 12 education space, it is absolutely essential that we be building with teacher and student voices. It's actually it's almost becoming a table stakes, not table stakes because a lot of people still aren't doing it. But I will say that actually doing it is gives you a leg up. And I can imagine that that serves for anybody's market. So I'll offer here that to the rest of us, our development cycle includes for us our stakeholder feedback, both students and educators and administrators. So for every step, like every big development cycle we do, we put it in front of them, have it tear it up like you said, have them tear it up like you say, and we immediately incorporate that. And I would say if we could build, if everybody could build that in, I think we would all have better products on the market.
1000% agree. Yeah. And there's a bad phrase and I apologize, but it's like, be ready to kill your baby because with a startup, you're so passionate about what you're creating. And sometimes it's just not right. And hearing it from a person really often is the thing that makes everyone realize a change or a pivot is needed. And so I love everything you just said, Amelia, because it's like it brings home that we really need to focus and we really need to be okay with making changes if it's just not resonating.
and adding one last thing, and I'm just going to stop so everybody else can add in. But I've also found that for the people that I've worked with and whose opinion I've asked, it gives them ownership, and it actually can really help in go to market because they're so proud that their input and is in the product. And I love just sending them a little note and saying, "Hey, remember that comment you made here? We changed that. We fixed it. Here you are." And so when you're at a stage in your business where every interaction counts with a potential customer, those are real moments that you can translate into your pipeline.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, it's that IKEA effect works with your customers too. So it definitely makes it stickier for them if you acknowledge their feedback and then incorporate it. I'm going to go through some things really quickly just so you guys have it. The slides will be there, but I really love, pay attention to the enthusiasm. You're going to hear that from people, synthetic users, you're not. So again, that enthusiasm is definitely something to be able to listen to, hone in on, and apply. The other pieces to consider from that ICP perspective is company size as well as work style patterns. You may find that, smaller companies resonate with your product, bigger companies. Just think about those characteristics because that's going to help you focus in more on your ICP as well. And then here's just some examples of ICPs from a whole range of companies. So if you're, looking for other ideas or focus for your own organization, company, startup, etc., here's just some examples to reference and to build upon. And then I've given you, some charts to be able to work on. This is a really great workshop one to be able to use with your team members, use it within Gilded, ask people for feedback, can help you refine or establish your ICP. And then here's another way to think about the template. So you can put it into this type of diagram too. So if you want an interactive exercise or workshop to be able to work on with your crew, steal this, use this, apply it. And then, these are all just some of the takeaways that we gathered, from the insight and helped us really refine what we were doing. So pulling all that information together, as Amelia highlighted, when I answered, talk to people. That's really, really going to help you identify and hone your ICP and just make that product discovery more effective. What about AI? So again, I just wanted to reinforce that AI is a partner. It's not a replacement. It has a really hard time being able to take diverse pieces of information and bring them together. It'll try to create threads, but they're often really, really weird. And so again, it's getting better every day, but there's still facets that are just not there. And so again, don't think about AI as 100% replacement. Think about it as a partner. There are still things that humans are better at. And I believe that's going to continue to be the case for quite some time. So just don't ignore the humans. And then, yeah, these are just some tools to consider. In the slides, you'll see information about what each of the logos are if some aren't familiar to you. And then just when you think about, how you're going to apply AI to all the different facets that we're talking about, you can use them in a lot of different ways just to help you, again, as a partner, as you go through all these different steps and stages. But again, I don't see them as a replacement. I see them as a partner, as an accelerant. And then there are facets where you weave in that human brilliance. And then just wrapping this up again, just to remind yourself that this is all the things that are happening. We'll be talking about that develop and deliver next, which brings us into the last pieces of this diagram. And again, with AI, we can do things a lot faster. We can do things in a much more iterative and incremental manner, which allows us to get feedback constantly. And that's really, really valuable because the market is pretty competitive out there. So just wanted to say thank you to you guys. It's been a pleasure. If there are more questions you have, just let me know. We've got about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that, Diana. As a reminder here, so if anyone has any immediate questions on not just that topic, but stuff from the first session, Diana, also, if you want to give a very brief highlight of your final kind of capstone third session, again, the recording and slides will be out, and the conversation will, of course, continue in the actual channel on thegilded.com. But if you want to give a very quick 2-minute highlight of what your last session will be like, so that way we can kind of know what to prepare up until then.
Yeah, no preparation. Just show up, be willing to learn. We're going to talk about taking that information from the discover side and the definition side, and then using that to be able to build your product. And so that's what we're going to be covering in the next session, just taking the two pieces from before, capitalizing on that insight that we've gathered and actually building our product. And I could say prototype, I could say wireframe, whatever term you want to use, but actually, putting something in front of people in the earlier stages that we've gone through. It will be really, really rough, but where we're going to get to in the next session, it's a bit more refined and a way for you to really get focused on what you're going to bring to market.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate the words of wisdom and knowledge sharing. So, as we have continued questions, reach out to Diana in the chat. We'll facilitate more of that, and then we'll share the presentation and recording out after. So,
Great.
thank you again, and enjoy everyone the rest of your Wednesdays.
Have fun. Thank you guys. Take care. Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Diana.